Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to look closely at a subject that is incredibly heavy but deeply important to understand. We're going to examine the tragic events that unfolded on August 1st, 2026 in Twin Falls, Idaho. But perhaps more importantly, we're going to look at the unbreakable, resilient response of the community in its wake. You know, when tragedy strikes an ordinary place on an entirely ordinary day, the chaos that follows often leaves us searching for answers. But as we'll see, it also reveals the profound courage of everyday people.
There is nothing I can say right now to help heal us, except for us to be with each other. This is how we heal our community, right here, right now. Those words were spoken by City Councilman Grayson Stone during a candlelight vigil just days after the shooting. And honestly, that quote perfectly anchors what we're going to explore today. This isn't just a timeline of a horrific event. It's a real look at how a community processes unimaginable grief and actually finds unity in its darkest hour. Let's walk through exactly how this town stood together. Section 1. The day it happened. So to really grasp what happened here, the setting is crucial. We're talking about a brand new In-N-Out burger. It had just opened a week prior, on July 24th, which marked the company's highly anticipated expansion into Idaho. It sat right in one of the busiest commercial districts on the north side of Twin Falls, a bustling area completely full of hotels, retailers, and other restaurants. It was a Saturday afternoon. People were just running errands, waiting in the drive-thru line, enjoying the summer day. It was literally the epitome of an everyday, relatable scene. And that is exactly what makes the sudden eruption of violence so shocking. Right at 2:29 p.m., that everyday calm was absolutely shattered as gunfire erupted. Moments later, the shooter retrieved an AR-15-style rifle from his trunk. But then, something truly extraordinary happened. Armed bystanders immediately returned fire. Their incredibly swift response actually forced the suspect to flee the busy restaurant area, driving him away to the parking lot of the nearby Twin Falls Visitor Center. Section 2. Confronting the shooter. When seconds mattered most, 3 defenders immediately intervened. First, we have Jordan Salinas, a 35-year-old resident from nearby Kimberly. Now, he had actually begun training seriously with firearms after a mass shooting at the Boise Town Square back in 2021. When he heard the shots, he sought out the source, spotted the shooter firing at cars, and engaged him with a suppressed semi-automatic pistol. Second, there was an unidentified off-duty Idaho state trooper who also fired at the shooter. And third, there was Austin Scott James, a former law enforcement officer who actively moved to confront the attacker. The situational awareness displayed by Austin Scott James here is just staggering. Even though he was armed, he intentionally chose not to draw his weapon when running toward the gunfire. Relying heavily on his law enforcement background, he knew that responding officers were rushing to an active shooter scene, and he feared they might mistake him for the gunman. Because of this incredible split-second restraint, he was critically wounded during the confrontation. But in a gripping turn of events, his wife, who happens to be an emergency room nurse, was right there with him and immediately began treating his critical wounds on the scene. The impact of these 3 men, it literally cannot be overstated. Twin Falls Police Chief Matthew Hicks stated plainly, "We believe their actions helped drive the suspect away from the scene, preventing further casualties." And the local sheriff echoed this exactly, calling them true heroes who, without a doubt, saved many lives. By drawing the shooter's attention and forcing him to retreat, they stopped an active threat in a densely packed space. The threat ultimately ended just down the road. Driven away by the defender's gunfire, the perpetrator, 24-year-old Chad Williams, fled to the visitor center parking lot. Once there, he fired into a parked vehicle before ultimately dying from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Authorities later identified him as a former student at the College of Southern Idaho who had actually served on the Student Senate before being impeached for procedural reasons. As of the reports, law enforcement believes he acted entirely alone, though his exact motive remains under active investigation. Section 3. Remembering the victims. The raw numbers here are devastating. 3 people were killed, 7 others were injured. But look, we all know these aren't just statistics on a screen. These were family members, colleagues, friends, and vital members of the community who were simply going about their Saturday. Let's take a moment to look at who they were. This is 23-year-old Ashley Grayby. Ashley had traveled all the way from Stockton, California. She was a manager for In-N-Out, and she was actually on a special traveling team tasked with training the new employees right there at the Twin Falls location. She dreamed of managing her very own store one day. As her family so warmly shared, she was an amazing, beautiful soul who loved living life. She was completely driven and had this contagious laugh. Her life was taken while she was simply doing the job she absolutely loved. We also remember 66-year-old Dale Schultz. Dale and his wife were driving back home to Salt Lake City, Utah, after attending a family reunion. They just happened to be in the parking lot when the shooter, fleeing the restaurant, fired into their vehicle. Dale's life was completely full of art and faith. He was a very talented creator of bronze artwork. In fact, he had donated one of his bronze pieces to St. Olaf Catholic Church in Salt Lake City, a piece the church now plans to make a permanent, lasting part of their building in his honor. The third victim who lost his life was 59-year-old Christopher Clonch, known affectionately to his friends as Toff. Christopher lived in Hagerman, Idaho. After completing a rehab program himself a couple of years prior, he dedicated his life to helping others achieve sobriety at a local recovery center. His friend Garen Taylor beautifully captured his legacy, saying he helped hundreds of people and that his daily attitude was simply, "I get to help someone today." It was a life deeply dedicated to service, ended far too soon.
We absolutely must also acknowledge the resilience of the 7 injured survivors. Take Stephen Pixley, for example. He had recently moved to Twin Falls to get his life together, found a job, and was just riding his motorcycle near the restaurant when he was struck. A bullet went through his arm, causing him to lose the use of 3 of his fingers. Yet, according to his family, even while waiting for surgery, his attitude remained wonderful. He was in there laughing and joking. It is such a profound testament to the enduring human spirit in the face of random, senseless violence.
Section 4. Aftermath and Investigation. In the days that followed, the physical city kind of hit pause, but networks of support immediately activated. While the visitor center and nearby businesses like Swig and Chick-fil-A closed their doors, a family assistance center quickly opened up at Sawtooth Elementary. The FBI deployed digital tip lines and health personnel flooded in to offer therapy. The physical infrastructure rested, but the community's heart went straight into overdrive.
Section 5. A community in mourning. Just a few days later, on the evening of August 4th, hundreds of Twin Falls residents filed into the city park for a candlelight vigil. I want you to imagine the scene, a long line stretching way past the stage and out into the grass, people walking quietly past flowers and candles in the fading evening light. Right at the center of the memorial stood 3 crosses. On each cross was a blue heart bearing the names of Ashley, Dale, and Christopher. It was a space specifically carved out for mourners to write tributes, share their immense grief, and simply stand shoulder to shoulder with their neighbors. During the vigil, Pastor Chuck Swoboda perfectly captured why gatherings exactly like this are so incredibly vital. He noted that trying to find the perfect healing words for something so utterly senseless is nearly impossible. Instead, he shared this thought: the Bible says to mourn with those who mourn, and I think the best way of bringing healing is beginning by mourning together. It wasn't about having all the answers. It was entirely about shared presence. And then, a truly unforgettable moment occurred. Right in the middle of the silence of the crowd, a local resident named Joseph Bosteter felt this sudden, overwhelming urge that the community needed something more. Spontaneously, he just began to sing Amazing Grace. He led the mourning crowd, and even though not everyone knew all the words, their voices rose together in a shared expression of raw vulnerability and solidarity. It was this unplanned, breathtaking moment of beauty rising right out of the ashes of heartbreak. So we've walked through the facts, the timeline, the heroism, and the profound sorrow of August 1st, 2026. From the brave bystanders who selflessly stopped further bloodshed to a community wrapping its arms around the grieving in a candlelit park, this story is as much about human resilience as it is about tragedy. Which leaves us with this final thought to consider. When an ordinary summer day is shattered by unimaginable heartbreak, how the communities find the strength to heal. As we saw firsthand in Twin Falls, perhaps the answer is simply by choosing to stand together in the dark. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other.